That's the live one. This one,
For
are they both live?
inviting me.
Okay,
This
if you
is,
speak into it, you will find that it's live.
This is a big thrill for me. I've given hundreds of scientific lectures, but this is only my second actual reading of non-fiction works. So I'm very nervous. So I'll get started, and I guess I'll read 10 or 20 or a number of these paragraphs. I've written about 40 of them, and I sent them to Eleanor and Johnny, and Johnny's Dr. Stanton, everyone's a doctor to me, said, oh, write 200 and then we'll talk. So I'm not sure whether I have 200 in me, but I'm working on it. So wish me luck. Lately, when I leave the house, I say to my family, wish me luck in my eternal struggle against ignorance. Or, wish me luck with my efforts to prevent cancer. Or, wish me luck keeping myself amused. Or my family's favorite. Wish me luck in the dangerous fight against my own stupidity. I was thinking I should write a poem along these lines, and then I began to think about my brother Anselm and his terrific poem, Have a Good One. Anselm and I really became friends when he visited us in Luxembourg in the summer of 1982. My wife had an internship at the European Union, and I was writing a few thesis chapters about the energetic costs of locomotion in flesh flies. Wish me luck with the problem of insect body size. Early in the summer, he stopped by with a girl and a couple of Eurail passes. A month or so later, he was back with very little money, the last leg of his Eurail pass, and a Paris-New York plane ticket, but no girl. We didn't ask too many questions, just fed and watered him and gave him a hot shower. Wish me luck with my efforts to make sense of love. After that, our paths started crossing more regularly, and I take a lot of pleasure in seeing him and his family. Wish me luck in figuring out how to be a dad. His poems seem so serious, yet have such a lightness to them. I really dig them. In the past few years, I've tried to write a few non-science pieces, and it turns out to be a lot harder than I imagined. Anselm, wish me luck in my efforts to write one terrific work.
Good luck.
Why I am not an entomologist. I went to graduate school at UC Davis in 1985 with a plan to become an entomologist. My advisor had some money to study the Mexican fruit fly, Anastrapha ludens, a pest of oranges, among other fruits. I tried taking Introduction to Insect Systematics, but found the memorization impossible. Every day, more and more lines about insects. Nevertheless, my thesis work was all about Anastrapha ludens. Afterwards, I went on to spend 10 more years working on flies. As 5 years went by in Salt Lake City, I would wake up every day and head to my office thinking about the problem of insect body size. Most people seemed to feel they were small and would ask me, what problem? Luckily, I was able to squeeze in some work on sardine life history traits. The sardine work did not appear in my PhD thesis, which was titled The Evolution of Age and Size at Maturity. After I turned my thesis in, we had a party and quite a few drinks. In the end, I wrote more than 12 papers about insects and 3 or 4 about sardines. One of my papers was even about oranges. Dyed gelatin oranges wrapped in parafilm. The fruit flies thought these were oranges and laid eggs in them. The paper, which was never published, but some of our other studies of ersatz oranges were. Shit. I am not squeamish about shit. One of the first things my mom did when we moved to the country in 1972 was to have some friends help her build a compost privy. We used one side for 6 months and then shoveled out that side into the other side for another 6 months of composting. We had to pee in the woods. When I turned 14, I had a job every Saturday at the Mendocino wastewater treatment facility. There was not really much work, but I scraped shit off the sides of channels, shoveled dried compost, learned to perform biological oxygen demand tests, and studied the wastewater treatment plan operator's certification test. After a year, I passed the test, which was a little silly since there was no way I could actually fix the pumps and the rest of the plant. I used to like having lunch with the guys who worked there, Vietnam vets, competent, and with that ex-military ability to effortlessly hang out. I graduated from shit, but went on to work on carrion and compost for more than 10 years. Now my sons and I take turns cleaning one of the bathrooms in our house. In the end, maybe I was too comfortable with shit. I got hepatitis A in Mexico in 1986, probably from some dirty roadside tacos. Meat. We just got a cat, 12 years after our first cat died. Fritz, the cat, is fun, and he's made me reflect a little on my relationship with animals. My first cat, Megara, was eaten by a dog in 1973. All we found was the tail. At that time, we lived in the country and kept goats and chickens. The goats were a bit like pets, especially the kids. I remember frolicking with alfalfa's triplets in the field next to our house. Eventually, we ate the kids and split the chickens with some raccoons. One of my chores was going out into the woods, cutting brush and dragging it back to the goat's pen. I once found a snake along the way. A machete was in my hand and I chopped the snake into pieces. I like to eat meat. I have had dog, roadkill, snails, kangaroo, and most bits. I enjoy liver and tripe, but not pancreas. In 1971, we were traveling in Ireland, and a farm we stayed at had a cow's head on the kitchen table. The farmer cut me off a piece of cheek. From 1982 to 2005, I did research on animals: fish, flies, frogs, beetles, zooplankton, and mice. I raised them, measured everything about them, counted them in the millions, froze them, gassed them, broke their necks, cut them into little pieces, and flash froze their parts in individual vials. Now I study humans, but I learned how to be a scientist through my work on animals. I know I went too far with the snake, but I wonder about all the rest. My heroes. I'm rereading The Man Who Went Up in Smoke, featuring Police Superintendent Martin Beck. Beck is in Budapest. He's one of my heroes. It's 1968. Every day he wakes up and tries to do the right thing. I admire him more now that I've been working for the government for a decade. In Budapest, Beck felt lost and confused, but the Danube was beautiful and the Hungarians were very proud of their food. In 1991, when I visited Budapest, the Danube was still lovely and the Hungarians were still very proud of their food. I was there on my way from a week in the mountains with a group of evolutionary biologists, including my second hero of Budapest, John Maynard Smith. We were on our way to the European Society of Evolutionary Biology meeting in Debrecen. Martin Beck did not go to Debrecen, but for a moment there was some speculation that he might have to. In the Alps, I remember Maynard Smith, then in his 70s, hiking up to a meadow with his wife and a group of students. He and his wife lay down in the meadow and peered intently at the tiny flowers and pollinating insects. Later he gave us an impromptu talk on game theory and reproductive behavior of bees and plants. In Budapest, my professor, Steve Stearns, Maynard Smith and I shared some Lefroy and talked about his youthful experiences with trade unions and communism and the major problems of evolution, notably sex, death, the body, and the brain. Pretty good topics. Maynard Smith is one of my heroes because of his lifelong love of glorious nature and his lifelong pleasure in trying to make sense of the world. Beck and Smith are gone, but I still like to reread the Martin Beck mysteries, and I still think about Maynard Smith's work applying game theory to animal and human behavior. Learning. I like to learn. I had a 4-year full scholarship and then 8 years of paid graduate work and 10 years of postdoctoral training. So I guess I am really good at it. That's a lot, even in my profession. My mom taught me to live frugally anywhere in the world and to play Scrabble. My dad taught me to take a taxi, send the laundry out, and love my vocation. Chuck and Peter taught me to read philosophy and talk about it. Loff and Joe and Adam and Deborah taught me about friendship. I'm still learning about that. Bill and Ray and Rachel taught me to write a scientific paper. I learned about evolutionary ecology from Steve and Rick and John, and quantitative genetics from Michael and Timothy and another Rick. Sharon and John and Ray taught me about physiology. I missed learning from Ray. Jim Carey taught me all about insect demography. I learned about heartbreak from Gina and Christy and Tilda. They taught me about love, too. Ted and Kate and Simon taught me about grief. Alcohol and Joel tried to teach me about humility. I'm not sure I've learned enough from them. Steve and Susan taught me about mice. Rick Troiano taught me to analyze survey data. Now I have 2 sons and occasional postdocs. Sometimes I think about the fact that the best ball players aren't always the best coaches, and I wonder if I'll ever be as good a teacher as I am a student. Train rides. I love trains. The first train I remember is the Miami to Chicago Amtrak. My sister and I roamed the train, and an elderly couple gave us each silver dollars. The second train I remember is my dad's train ride. Curiously, his wives didn't like this book. They seemed to think it was trivial, pornographic, or both. I wonder if they were just mad that he was happy in his train reverie for a bit without them. I loved my train rides from Manhattan to Philadelphia for a few months in the spring of 1985. Sunrise, the industrial landscape of New Jersey glowing as we emerged from the tunnel, and maybe that pleasure of being a man alone in a train, fully compensated for what could have been just a long commute. These days, I mostly take the subway from Rockville to Washington, D.C. I wonder if anyone else in the train is happy. Okay, these now slightly read a poem and then mixed in with the prose piece too. Is that allowed?
What? What?
Monday. Heavily chlorinated, I put on my cheapest suit and calculate the number of cans of shaving cream I will use before